Hello everyone and welcome back to FiddleUP. I'm Emerald Ray and today we're going to be talking about how to join a band or how to find a band. And so a lot of people ask me this question like, how do I find other musicians to play with and things like that? And there's so many different ways that you can find people these days. You can find them out at gigs, at sessions, online. The first thing you want to think about is what kind of band do I want to be in? Like, what is my dream situation? What would be, the ideal situation of a band for me to play in? If that's like people in your local area, then that's going to mean different networking than if you're thinking about, a different area or a different level of music professionalism. If you're thinking about just finding some other people who this is their hobby and you just want to play some local gigs, then that is one thing. If you're thinking about, I want to find some professional musicians and like really do this and go on tour, then those are going to be different people. So you want to think about like, what are my goals? What are my goals and dreams for who I want to play with, and what's going to happen, in my dream scenario. So the next thing you want to do is network with other musicians. And hopefully you've done this already. Hopefully you're not thinking I'm going to go play professional music and you don't know of any other musicians. But if you live in the middle of nowhere and, you really kind of, stuck in terms of that. So you want to think about, where am I going to find these people? And, knowing exactly what you want, what your goals are, is going to help you figure out how to find them. Sessions are great for these kind of things. If you go to jam sessions and things like that, you're going to meet a ton of other musicians who are going to be all different levels, from just beginning level to professional musicians who are running the sessions and things like that. So that's a great place to meet like a whole smattering of people of different walks of musical life. And then you can talk to them and network with those people. So what you want to do is start networking. And I do really mean networking. Like, don't try to start a band with your first person you meet. Like, try to meet a whole bunch of people. Go to a few sessions, go to a few places, go to a camp, go to a this, go around and meet a whole bunch of people. And within that, you'll meet some people who are, just session buddies, people that from the scene, sort of acquaintances that and they're kind of in your network. Maybe they could offer you a gig sometime or, something like that, but maybe they're not somebody that you would play in a band with. Then you're going to meet people who are like good old bosom friends, people that you really connect with on a personal level, but maybe wouldn't start a band with them because maybe they are another fiddle player, or they play the same instrument as you, or they're already working and doing a whole bunch of other stuff and they don't have time, or so you'll meet some acquaintances and some really good friends, but maybe those people won't all be the people that are going to be your potential bandmates. So what you want to find is your actual potential bandmates, and these are people that you vibe with in a different way. You want to pick people who vibe with you musically and also have the same goals as you do for what the band would need to be. And this is really important. And we're going to talk about the expectations a little bit later, because that's not something that I feel like gets talked about enough, and I want to spend some time on that. But for now, we're going to talk about your potential bandmates. So you want to find people who you have some musical chemistry with, and that's when you play with them. Like, it really feels like you're connected. They understand your eyebrow raises. They just get you. It's like any sort of other chemistry. You have chemistry with friends and romantic partners and things like that. There's something about musical chemistry that really is unbeatable. You want to make sure that you have, you're vibing with this person in a musical way, and you kind of get each other, and you don't have to explain much. There's just some musical chemistry there. And, it's also going to be down to loving to play the same music. Maybe you really love such and such a wing of Irish music, or such and such a wing of country music, or, you really have that chemistry and compatibility as well. It's a little like finding a partner. Chemistry and compatibility in terms of like what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in this band. And, coming up with an idea of like, oh, if we were going to play together, we could do such and such a thing. You're going to have kind of an idea when you're vibing with somebody musically of what you could do together. And it could be something that you weren't even expecting until you met that person as well. It could be something that wasn't totally top of your priority list in terms of what you were dreaming of when you went to that networking thing. But you turned up and just vibes were happening, and suddenly you were like, yeah, I could do that with this person. That would be cool. So it really does work like that. I promise. There's like sometimes bands, just kind of spring from the earth like that, or a certain musical collaboration. And again, this potential bandmate is not necessarily going to be a friend, and not necessarily going to be one of those random people that you met in a session one day that you thought were really cool. You want to find these bandmate, types of people. And then you want to, assess their personality as well. This is often something that, people don't think about it until it's too late. But, make sure that even if this person isn't like a bosom buddy, somebody that's like, a tribal member, make sure there's somebody that you can spend a really good amount of time with. Make sure there's somebody that you can work with. Make sure there's somebody who's being professional. Make sure, if you're going to be doing gigs that are on long drives, make sure this is somebody that you can spend a long drive in the car with, because that's really important. So again, if you have a whole band, there's never going to be like a perfect match of every personality with every personality. And at the end of the day, the musical chemistry is the most important thing. But the professionalism is equal to that in my mind, is everybody playing their role and doing their job and being objective and all that kind of thing. So if you want more on professionalism, please see the video on how to be professional. And, I go through all the steps on how to do that. But it's very important that even if this isn't a fully professional band, like even if you're just doing, some things here and there, it's really important to have some professionalism, because it's just sort of basic etiquette, in terms of working with a group and, working with any group of people, even if it's not a serious venture, like where you're going to go get a record label or something like that. If it's just like, oh, we want to play in this pub that we love on Sundays, that's totally fine. But you want to make sure that the details are taken care of, that everybody knows where they're supposed to go, that, everybody has all the information they need, everybody knows well ahead of time, and all those little things that just make everything more enjoyable. It's really important to have those things, even if it's not like we're going to make it big. It just makes the whole thing easier and more fun at any possible level. And so last but not least, we're going to talk about expectations. So I was getting into a little bit of that with the last one, as are we going to go on tour, or is this just we're doing this on the weekends and we're only working in our local area? These are things that are really good to talk about at the beginning of any venture, so that you don't have anybody feeling like, oh, this isn't going anywhere. Like, you want to be really clear what your goals and expectations are at the start of any collaboration. And, generally you'll talk about this, but sometimes people don't. And sometimes even at professional levels, people neglect to have the conversation about, where is this going? Where do we want this to go? And it can honestly, expectations causes the demise of bands more than you would even believe. Especially professional bands, people, make changes in their life, their expectations change, and, they expect everybody to roll along with them. Or, there may be one person in the band who really wants to be on a hugely upward trajectory in their career, and the rest of the band really doesn't. And so, that can either be, a weight holding down the person who does want to go further, or, and also can be very frustrating for the rest of the band, being expected to do such and such more than they signed up for all the time. So it's very important to be clear with yourself first and foremost about what your expectations are, and what your expectations are for the other band members' working styles too. This is something that we don't often talk about, but I'll talk about it for a quick second. So I have had bands go sideways before because I have a very particular working style that's different than other people's working styles, as you might have guessed from the way I am, from the tone of this professional course. You know, I'm very into professionalism and very into being prepared and things like that. And some people like to just show up to the rehearsal and jam, and that's not a problem unless, somebody else really doesn't want me to turn up with my homework done, because I'm gonna turn up with my homework done. I'm gonna turn up with things having been learned. I'm gonna, know what's going on. If it's a band situation, I'm gonna turn up with some ideas of what we should be working on. And I've had situations where I was the prepared one, so I was the one who was ended up leading the rehearsals, not because I wanted to, but because it just went that way, because I was the one who brought my homework in and other people wanted to just jam. And so, for me, it was sort of like, oh, we don't have to work on my thing. We can do your thing if you want. But, if somebody else is not quite being assertive about that, you know what I mean? It can just get, the dynamics of all this can get a little bit off. So, yeah, I am like Little Miss having my homework done. So I know that about myself. So I now know how to get through situations where maybe somebody else needs things to be a little bit more loosey goosey. And I will either decide that I don't want to work this with that person because we don't have like the same, I don't vibe the same, like working styles there needs to be a flow, a back and forth of how you do things. So I generally work the best with people who are like me and who are like, okay, so we're doing this now, and da 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 da. I, the whole thing feels very efficient. And it's not to say that I don't work well with other types of people, but I'm very aware of myself and what my strengths and weaknesses are, and just what what my thing is. And so it's good to be aware of that, but sometimes you're not going to be totally aware of all of those things until you get in it and figure out who you are as a musician, what's going on. Played in a couple of bands and made lots of mistakes and all that stuff. So have fun, everyone. Have fun with that. Enjoy it. This is supposed to be fun, whether you're doing it for serious or not for serious. Like, this is supposed to be fun at the end of the day. That's the great part about playing music, is that it is fun. So enjoy it most of all. And please send me your questions if you'd like to know more about this. And I will see you in the next video.